While Hilton points may not be the most valuable, they do have some pretty interesting hotel brands at the very top tier. Today we're going to talk about Hilton luxury brands and explain what you need to know about each of them. My name is Sean. I'm here with my co-host as well as a very special repeat guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherwin, the other half of the Credit Card BS podcast. Today's episode is titled Hilton Luxury Brands Explained. Joining us today is a Hilton expert, my friend Satvik.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so Satvik has been to many Hilton properties, right? And you also have a lot of Hilton credit cards. Would you say Hilton's your main hotel loyalty program?
Yeah, it's definitely the main one. I've tried to branch out more, but it was the first hotel I got into when I got into credit cards to begin with, and I've stayed at a lot, and I've really enjoyed them, especially at the higher end.
Yes, and we're really only going to be focusing on the high-end luxury tier brands today for an important reason, and that's because Hilton points are really only a good redemption at the higher end. So if you're using your Hilton points on a Hampton Inn or a Hilton Garden Inn, most likely you're not going to get good cents per point, and you're sort of wasting those points. You're much better saving them and using them at a higher tier brand, because usually they cap the number of points you need to redeem them. So your cents per point is going to be much better. Sean, anything else you'd like to add about the strategy?
No, I pretty much
One caveat for that, I think one thing that's generally good about points in general is even at some of the lower tier brands, you can get good value if there's an event going on that they're raising the prices for. So like in Palm Springs, California, in the 3 weekends in April when they have back-to-back Coachella, and then Stagecoach, even an Embassy Suites can get away with charging $600 a night, but the standard room is still 60,000 points a night. So I went to Stagecoach this year. I was able to get 3 nights at the Embassy Suites Desert Springs for 180,000 Hilton points, when cash-wise it would cost well over $2,000. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, there's definitely like cases you can get like really good value in that sense. I mean, that's just nice because even though they're like the Hilton, quote unquote, are dynamic, they're not really dynamic, right? Because they still fall in the bucket. So that's a really good point.
I think another point I have to add, quickly is...
go ahead.
Yeah, so the other cool thing is with the Hilton free night certificates that you earn from Amex, they can be redeemed for any standard room, basically, with very few exceptions. So that includes the highest and most expensive hotels. Now, if you compare to like competitors like Marriott, for example, they have a points cap on that certificate, whether it's 50K or 85K or 35K. Hyatt usually restricts you to a category, and even their 1 through 7 certificate doesn't cover the highest tier, category 8. And you'll see that with IHG with the 40,000 cap, although you do get to top up. But with Hilton, the certificates are truly, you can use anywhere with standard rooms. That includes like the most expensive Waldorf Astorias, for example, which we are going to talk about. So if there's nothing else to add about that, we can start with our first brand. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, so, the first brand, we're doing this in order of least to highest luxury. So the least luxurious high-tier luxury brand within Hilton is Conrad Hotels. So Conrad Hotels tend to be more modern. They tend to be a bit more minimalist. They're definitely newer hotels, more focused on a younger demographic. But with that said, these are also not, I would say, top-tier luxury hotels in the sense that, you're not going to be getting the over-the-top opulence, high degree of service that you may get at some higher tier hotels, given that it's marketed to a younger demographic. The closest, I guess, example of hotels that are in a similar family to Conrad Hotels would be JW Marriott, maybe high tier Grand Hyatts, Intercontinental, not in terms of the styling, but W Hotels. Again, not in terms of the styling, but in terms of the level of luxury and service you would be expecting. So those are really kind of the best way I could describe Conrad Hotels. I've only stayed at one. I personally didn't have that good of an experience. It was the Conrad in Abu Dhabi. It was fine. Like, there's nothing like particularly wrong with that hotel. I just wasn't, I guess, amazed with it. It wasn't a special experience. But I think, what at a lot of these, especially the city hotels, in these kind of like one tier below top tier luxury hotel brands is that's almost what you're kind of going for at like a JW Marriott or at a Conrad. You're not trying to create this super hyper memorable over the top experience. You're really trying to create something that's consistently very comfortable, and you do feel that is luxurious, if not over the top luxurious, if that makes sense. So, right, like when you pick, for example, a random Marriott or a Westin or a Hilton or a Hyatt Regency in a random city, wherever it may be, you're expecting a consistent experience, but it's not necessarily a luxurious experience. When you pick a JW Marriott or a Conrad or an Intercontinental, you're expecting a fairly luxurious and comfortable experience. Does that make sense to both of you guys, my take there?
Yeah, I think one thing that does differentiate Conrad from some of these other brands like JW Marriott is they do all tend to be very new. Like hard to think of a Conrad, maybe some city ones in Asia that are like old. Most of them, especially the ones in the North America area, either recently renovated or tend to be very new. So at least on that side, there's a little more consistency, I feel like, because it is still a smaller brand than some of its comparables.
So Satvik, have you stayed at any particular Conrads that were memorable? Like the only one I've been to, unfortunately, was Conrad Las Vegas, which to me was very disappointing in terms of how stingy their elite benefit delivery was, as well as just the hotel room being nothing too special above the regular Hilton Tower. But I'm wondering if you had different experiences you would like to share.
Well, I stayed at one Conrad. I have a couple more planned, but I stayed at one, which is a Conrad Punta Mita in Puerto Vallarta. But I stayed there during festive season. The hotel was completely sold out, and it was still very nice. Like, it was definitely high-end luxury. It was a little big hotel, and because it was like right New Year's Eve onwards, it was kind of crowded and busy. But facilities wise, it was very nice. We stayed a couple nights in a regular ocean view room, and then the last night we stayed in the beachfront ocean view suite, and that one was really nice. It had a private plunge pool, like basically a private jacuzzi, and it had a bunch of restaurants, and it was in a nice location in Punta Mita. So I haven't stayed in more. I heard good things about the Conrad Tulum. That one's really new and it looks really special and really big, but I kind of enjoyed it. I think it was a good brand. I think it was hard to judge it because it was super crowded during that time, so naturally the service might have been a little harder. But I think in general, they kind of share that same vibe of being high-end and, minimalist and modern.
Cool. Is there anything else about Conrad? Otherwise, let's pivot to our second brand today, which is LXR Hotels and Resorts. This one is a little more unique and less consistent. So Sean, do you want to kind of explain what the general vibe here is?
Yeah, so here with LXR, it's almost weird because you have like the very top tier, which is the Waldorf Astoria. You have one tier below, which is Conrad. You're almost like at a half tier jump, if that makes sense, to LXR, where it's essentially, these are more unique properties. This is not as much of a brand, more as a collection of luxury hotels that maybe would not fit in one of the traditional like Hilton luxury brands. And so, hotels that fit that category are kind of going to LXR. And so this is similar to like Marriott's luxury collection, maybe Hyatt's Unbound collection, although Hyatt's Unbound collection is a little more inconsistent, where, you don't have necessarily a normal like brand fitting property. Now, what's funny about LXR hotels, similar to Marriott's luxury collection, is that you'll definitely see like a fair bit of variance, and you will definitely usually notice a very, very tiny, I guess, step down from the top tier luxury brands. Maybe partly due to that variance of not being able to be as consistent in the brand standards or whatever. But you'll see like a bit of similarity there. Now, some like well-known LXR hotels is like Zemi Beach House, Habitur Palace, which I think actually is not. I think that one actually left. There was one in Dubai that's no longer affiliated with Hilton. There's one in Kyoto. Sherwin, you stayed at the one in Santa Monica, and then there's also one of the ones that our viewers might be most familiar with, Crockford's in Las Vegas. I've stayed at that property many times actually. Used to be a really, really nice hotel, and what I've heard about it now is it's gone downhill a bit. But so yeah, LXR hotels are just more unique. They're not fitting within the traditional brand standard, but you're definitely like a step up, I guess, from the JW Marriott tier, the Conrad tier, the Intercontinental tier. Some of these properties definitely will be like true top tier luxury experiences. like really, really high tier stuff. Some of them will still be very luxurious, but maybe not quite at that top tier yet. You're just given that this is a collection brand, you're going to see a greater level of variance than you would in a traditional hotel brand.
Safik, have you stayed at any LXR properties, and what do you think of? I haven't stayed at that many myself, so I don't.
I actually haven't stayed yet at any LXRs, but I do have some upcoming, especially the Roku one in Kyoto, which is a luxury onsen hotel. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but haven't stayed at any just yet.
Cool.
Sherwin, how is the Santa Monica LXR?
So I definitely think it's a nice property. However, given the cash rates they were charging as well as the number of points that are required, I definitely think there are better options, especially for redemptions. It just did not feel like I was getting my money's worth, to be quite honest. I mean, it's definitely a nice property, but yeah, that's all I have to say.
No, that definitely makes sense. Okay, so if there's nothing else, let's move on to the final luxury brand we're going to talk about today. This is by far Hilton's top tier luxury brand. This is the Waldorf Astoria brand. And this is what I would define as like a tier one luxury brand, where you've really achieved, the highest tier of luxury that a chain hotel can offer. These are not hotels that are holding back in the opulence department. These are not hotels trying to necessarily, scale themselves down to appeal to a younger crowd. These are supposed to be, really the pinnacle of what Hilton as a company can offer in their hotel experience. And these are, in my experience, have been very, very nice hotels. I've stayed at Waldorf Astoria Monarch Beach, Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills, Waldorf Astoria Cabo, Waldorf Astoria Dubai International Financial Center, and most recently Waldorf Astoria Las Vegas. And with the exception of Waldorf Astoria Las Vegas, these have all been very, very, really high-end experiences. Even at, like ones in the U.S. like Monarch Beach, where it wasn't quite as nice as what I wanted. For a U.S. hotel, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. Like, you're offering a pretty high degree of service, nice rooms. Similar brands will be like Marriott's Ritz-Carlton or St. Regis, Hyatt's Park Hyatt, although the Park Hyatt brand is more minimalist in nature, IHG's Regent brand. And so you're really achieving, the highest degree of luxury that Hilton can offer. And at, pretty much every Waldorf Astoria, you're going to get a really high degree of opulence, and you've entered that tier of it's a bit over the top, in a good way though, right? Where like at really high tier luxury hotels, you almost want it to feel a bit over the top because if you're supposed to feel like a splurge, right? It's not supposed to feel like business as usual. It's supposed to feel like a unique and special experience. And that's what I feel like a lot of these Waldorf Astoria properties provide, especially some of the high tier ones like the one that in Cabo that I've been to.
So Sean, what's your favorite Waldorf Astoria that you've been to? And what's your least favorite?
Favorite that I've been to by far is Waldorf Astoria Cabo. I love the design of the hotel. I know it's like the rooms are older, but I actually really like it. I feel like they have a lot of character. And then I got to say on a similar, I love Waldorf Dubai DIFC because they had really nice service, great upgrade for 5 nights to a suite. Amazing. That's one of my favorite hotel breakfasts I've ever had. Least favorite, I think, would probably be Waldorf Vegas. There's nothing wrong with the hotel per se. It's more of a fault of Vegas than it is that the Waldorf brand. There is no like accessible top tier luxury hotel in Vegas. It doesn't exist anymore. The only way you're getting like top tier service in Vegas is if you're a huge gambler or if you're dropping like $1,000 a night plus for like a hotel within a hotel, such as like Aria Sky Suites, MGM Sky Lofts, something like that. You're just not going to find a top tier, luxury hotel in Vegas. It just doesn't exist anymore. But I still thought it was a very comfortable experience.
That's awesome. How about you, Safik? What are some memorable Waldorf Astoria experiences you may have had?
Well, I've been to a lot of the ones Sean's been to and some other ones. Actually, the first Waldorf Astoria I went to was the one in Cancun, and I went there in February, and that one was really nice. Like, it was brand new. I think it was only built a couple of years ago, and all the rooms had ocean views. Compared to the Conrad Punta de Mita, especially, it's just noticeable how they only had 160 rooms, and it was in February, a random weekend in February, so it wasn't that crowded in general. But the service was definitely one level up, and while you're paying exorbitant prices for everything from like the spa to food, you could tell you were kind of getting that top quality service in every midst of it, and they're all really beautiful. I think another one that really stuck out to me that I like a lot is the Rome Cavalieri, a Waldorf Astoria hotel, which is in Rome. So this is actually right next to the Villa Borghese in Rome, which is a park. It's up on this hill, and the thing is, half the rooms overlook Rome, so you kind of have this really good view from your balcony of the whole city of Rome, and at night everything lights up, and it's just really beautiful and really amazing to see. And that's when the Italian luxury is just super gaudy and opulent, like gold plated everywhere, and that's kind of the style that they embraced. And it can come off as gaudy to some people, but I really liked it. It had a really good breakfast buffet that was included for Diamond members. The spa was really nice and reasonably priced, and just a really beautiful hotel and a great place to stay in Rome, even though it's out of the city. Least favorite ones, I stayed at the Waldorf Astoria in Panama, and like these are other ones. Like, I guess if you can kind of tell if the hotel costs less than $400 a night, your expectations probably should match that. So it was a nice hotel, but it was kind of like these city hotels, like unless they have some really special characteristic, it's hard to differentiate it. And I'm sure if I stayed at like the Hilton Panama, it wouldn't have made that much of a difference. It's still nice, but you could tell like it was a tier below some of Waldorf's top properties. So yeah,
That's cool. I actually haven't stayed at that many Waldorf Astorias compared to you two, probably because I'm pretty loyal to Hyatt. I have stayed at the Waldorf Astoria Dubai, not the same one Sean's stayed at, but the one on the Palm, and I thought it was really nice. I booked through FHR. I got to use my Hilton resort credit on the Aspires. Stacked with that, the rate wasn't too high. The food was really delicious with the FHR credit. They gave us a nice suite upgrade because we were both Diamond and FHR. And then they had the free breakfast was good. So I thought it was a strong delivery of benefits. And then I've also been to Waldorf Astoria Cabo, which might still be one of my favorite, if not my favorite property that I've been to.
That's awesome. So let me ask both of you guys, of the currently opened Waldorf Astoria hotels and ones that you haven't stayed at, which property, if you could pick one to stay at, what's on your top list of these hotels? For me, it's Waldorf Astoria Maldives. I mean, just given how overly, ridiculously opulent even the base villas are, it looks insane. But how about for both of you guys?
Yeah.
Well, I think I've seen a lot in North America, so I think some of the international ones I'm more curious to explore. Like the one in Rome or the one in Amsterdam, heard that's supposed to be Hilton's like nicest hotel in all of Europe. So that's one that I'd really, want to try out because it's right on the canal and has a really fancy restaurant in it. It's supposed to be really nice with a really nice spa and a unique kind of city hotel.
I would have to agree with Sean on this one. The Waldorf Astoria Maldives, especially, I think if I remember correctly, you book directly into like a overwater villa as the base room. That sounds really awesome. I'd probably prefer like a resort type over like city hotel type if I only could pick one Waldorf Astoria to stay at, just in terms of value for me. I remember staying at the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills, which is extremely nice property, but very expensive. I feel like I'm going to spend that many points or spend that much money. I'd rather do it in a hotel, resort situation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about Waldorf Astoria is if you compare it to something, especially like Ritz-Carltons, there aren't as many of them. So I think their Hilton holds them to a slightly higher level of service and uniqueness. So you kind of like stand out more, and I think they are different in a way than the Ritz-Carltons. Even when you compare like comparable properties, like we got a chance to stay at the Waldorf Astoria Monarch Beach and also stay at Ritz-Carlton Laguna Niguel, which are really right next to each other. You can kind of walk. And in fact, the Ritz is on the beach itself, while the Waldorf is kind of set back from the beach a little bit. But you could definitely tell with the Waldorf, like it felt like slightly more personalized service. The rooms were a lot bigger. They had this really nice beach club they'd drive you through. And, it kind of didn't feel as like, a generic luxury hotel. It felt like it had a little something more special.
Yeah, there's one thing I did want to ask both of you. about Waldorf Astoria versus Park Hyatt in particular. Now, I understand that generally Waldorf Astoria is considered a higher tier, more luxury brand, but I almost would prefer Park Hyatt in most instances because I think Hilton's elite benefits are much weaker than Hyatt if you're a globalist. For example, Waldorf Astoria can charge a lot for parking, whereas if you're a Hyatt globalist, those fees are waived on free nights. In the US, you only get $50 daily food and beverage credit as opposed to Hyatt, which gives you free breakfast for two. Usually order anything off the menu. I think the suite upgrades at Hyatt are more guaranteed than Hilton, which has the subject to availability policy that is more amorphous, in my opinion. So I wonder how you guys think about the difference between the two. I almost feel like unless it's like a very special aspirational property, I want to go to like Waldorf Astoria Maldives or Waldorf Astoria Cabo. I feel like as someone who has Hyatt Globalist, I still kind of prefer that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Okay, so having stayed at like a pretty decent variety of both, okay, I think it's an interesting question. I think especially in the US, like for sure, like there's no debate that Hyatt Globalist gives you way, way better treatment than Hilton Diamond. So for example, like I guess the most comparable properties I could kind of rate in the US is the Park Hyatt, Aviara, and Carlsbad versus Waldorf Astoria Monarch Beach. They're within an hour of each other. They're both like beach resorts. They're both not on the beach. They're both near the beach. Similar style and all that. Waldorf Astoria Monarch Beach will upgrade you as a diamond, like one room category. That's it. They will not give you late checkout, despite if there's no one in the hotel. I can personally attest to that. Right, you're not really getting any elite perks other than maybe that one category room upgrade and the $50 credit. Park Hyatt Aviara, on the other hand, upgraded me to a premium suite. It was only a one-night stay, but so was the Waldorf Astoria. The premium suite, you get a $120 breakfast credit. The reason they did that is because it's enough to cover 2 adults and 2 kids at the buffet, which is exactly what Hyatt is supposed to do, which is very nice, though, because if you don't have 2 adults and 2 kids, you have a little extra money to spend on a la carte items. I believe I did get late checkout for 4 p.m. at that property, even though they didn't have to, because at Hyatt Resorts, Hyatt doesn't have to do it. It's subject to availability. So really nice experience. Now, I will say, when you start moving further away from the U.S., the difference does become less noticeable. So like I had wonderful treatment at the Waldorf Astoria Dubai DIFC, where I had an amazing breakfast spread and I got upgraded to a suite without any issues. And it was a really, really nice experience. But, you still are going to see a more consistent, elite treatment with Hyatt, especially when you have like the suite upgrade awards. And while that point of like Park Hyatt generally being a lower tier brand, that is like a trend. It's not necessarily a rule. So like, for example, the Park Hyatt in Saigon that I stayed at definitely resembles a Waldorf Astoria way more than a Park Hyatt, but it still is a Park Hyatt, and it was really opulent and really nice and had a very, very, very high degree of service. I would agree with you. Like, I do think the elite treatment across the board is going to be better with Hyatt. It's just you are going to see it decrease further away from the U.S., like the difference. But you still will notice a difference because while there are some Hiltons that have had no problem upgrading me to a suite, I have had some places, such as Conrad Abu Dhabi, which did not want to upgrade me to a suite for whatever reason, despite being a diamond. But, I wouldn't have had an issue with the Hyatt because, Hyatt's more kind of cut and dry in their terms. Solvik, how about for you, though?
Okay, well, I've never stayed at a Park Hyatt, so I can't really speak to that. But I do think I agree that outside of the U.S., it's probably a little less distinguishable. Like, I think they are more willing to upgrade you. Like, I think even in Mexico, it's kind of noticeable that, they do treat you a little nicer than Diamond, especially when most of these hotels are willing to give you a full breakfast instead of a continental. I think the only one that might hold to the continental is the one in Cabo. But I think there, maybe it was just from the branding, like even the history of the brand versus the history of Park Hyatt. It's a name that kind of, gives people, when they think of it, they think of the level of a luxury that a St. Regis or Ritz-Carlton has. And maybe Park Hyatt just doesn't have that same, name value as the Waldorf Astoria does, which kind of also adds to it.
Yeah, I think those are
that makes
good
sense,
points.
especially with,
And I really
Park Hyatt
agree
being a
with
minimalist brand.
the point about just like the international treatment of Hilton. is much better than in the US, whereas I feel like the Hyatt treatment in the US is like more comparable, if that makes sense. Is there anything else any of you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I think the only thing is they are building a lot of new Waldorf Astorias that are kind of exciting. So they're building one in Lake Tahoe, I know of. They're actually building one in Saigon too. They're trying to expand a lot to Asia. They're supposed to build one in Sydney. They're building a couple in India. So they're really trying to increase their portfolio. And I think it'll be good because there's not at the level or number of properties as the Ritz-Carlton, but every one seems to be more unique. They're also building one in Costa Rica that's opening in February 2025 that we hope to check out. So
Great. That's super awesome. So thank you so much for your time, Safik, for coming onto our show and for all of your cool insights about Hilton. So if y'all enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking this video as well as subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in opening a credit card, perhaps to fund one of your hotel trips to a Hilton luxury brand or any other travel use case, please consider using one of our links down in the description below. It greatly helps support our channel. And Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
So if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers entirely for free and learn a ton, get deal alerts and all that, check out the Traveling Discord group at the link in the description. You will learn a ton, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.